Bet you think I don't know nothing about singing the blues, sister.
I heard something recently on NPR where they were talking about the enslaved people, my ancestors, and what their dreams were. And what they said that most likely their dream was hope. Hope that things would get better. Hope that we would all be where we are now. So I say to you, it's that hope and dreams that have us all up here in front of you right now, okay? All right. So now I'm going to do my duty, and that is to light this chalice, okay? So we light this flame with the hope that our choices and actions reflect the best of our hopes and the highest of our values. May we continue to grow in love, peace, and community.
There's a light in the darkness, though the night is black as my skin. There's a light burning bright, showing me the way. But I know where I've been. There's a cry in the distance. It's a voice that comes from deep within. There's a cry asking why. I pray the answers up ahead. 'Cause I know where I've been. There's a road we've been traveling, lost so many on the way, but the riches will be plenty, worth the price we had to pay. There's a dream in the future. There's a struggle we have yet to win. And there's pride in my heart, 'cause I know where I'm going. And I know where I've been. There's a road we must travel. There's a promise we must make. Oh, those riches, they will be plenty, worth the risk and the chances that we take. There's a dream in the future. There's a struggle we have yet to win. Use that pride in our hearts to lift us to tomorrow.
So if you don't have your children yet in a children and youth choir program, now you know that they all turn out just like this now. So y'all just sign them up. Wonderful. So great to have you home with us for this time and singing for us. Because in order to know where we are going, we need to know where we have been. There's a road that we've been traveling, and there's still a road we must travel. A promise we must make. There's a dream with the future, a risk we must take. There's a struggle that we have yet to win, and to sit still would be a sin. These are powerful words from the musical Hairspray. Thank you for bringing the power with your voice this morning, Asabi. So here we are. It is the last Sunday in February, the last Sunday for our theme of love. It's also the last Sunday in Black History Month. And so I have decided to call this message Love in Black and White. Now I realize that love has a lot of gray in it. More than 50 shades of gray, in fact, yes. But to take us where I want us to go this morning, I need to share some things about how Black churches have helped to shape America. Because in order to know where we're going, we need to know where we've been. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice said in a Washington Times interview, Black Americans were a founding population. Africans and Europeans came here and founded this country together. Europeans by choice and Africans in chains. You see, in founding this nation, Europeans brought their religion, while Africans were intentionally stripped of their religion. For generations, African slaves were kept from Christianity and were separated from each other so that they wouldn't retain their own practices or tribal religions and faiths. Drums were even outlawed for a long time, up until probably the Civil War, when Africans in America were finally introduced to Christianity. The church taught them that being a slave was ordained by God. The Africans in America were taught all of this, including how they were a people cursed by the sins of Ham, who was one of the sons of Noah, another story used from the Bible. And their divine punishment was to be enslaved. That's the story. That's how the Bible was used. And that their reward, if they were obedient, would come in the next life. So you can see how Christianity was initially used to exploit Black people. At first, slaves could only attend white churches rather than have their own. It was an arrangement that really didn't work well for either group. In the minutes of the Presbyterian Synod of 1834, the Synod of South Carolina and Georgia, it reads, "The gospel as things are now can never be preached to the two classes successfully in conjunction. The galleries or the back seats of the lower floors of white churches are generally appropriated to the Negroes," I'm obviously quoting here, "when it can be done without inconvenience to whites. When it cannot be done conveniently, the Negroes must catch the gospel as it escapes through the doors and windows." Of course, Black Christians desired more than the white man's convenience would allow. Black Christians wanted places of worship more compatible with their own sense of freedom and dignity. However, Black churches were considered dangerous and were outlawed in every southern state of the United States, and were suppressed and severely regulated by law until the Civil War. Before then, Black church meetings happened in secret, in the swamps and in bayous and under the cover of darkness. So Black churches emerged in response to white racism. Black Christians created their own churches to understand God and to read the Bible on their own terms. Because Christianity, as mediated through white church theologies, scorned and subjugated black people. Black Christians had to separate themselves from white churches in order to create a path for freedom and dignity. Christian religion tried to make the dehumanization of black people seem reasonable, seem inevitable. Africans in America had to separate themselves from preachers who would teach them about the Apostle Paul, rebuking a slave who wanted to become Christian he must first return to his master, is what is written. And they needed to break free from a church that told black people their captivity and debasement was ordained by God. The black church was born at a time when most white churches were preaching a message that I think we would all probably agree was evil in its ways of debasing non-white people. And in many ways, it was the black church and black leaders in America that have helped call Christianity back toward a higher truth of the equality of all people. Because in order to know where we're going, we need to know where we've been. There's still a road we must travel, a promise we must make, and there's a dream with the future and a risk we must take. We have to remember that black churches affirmed black people as human and as beloved at a time when society told them otherwise. For a long time in this country, the church was the only public institution where people with African heritage had total control. Scholar Eric Lincoln writes of the importance of the black church in that it became the community forum, the public school, the conservatory of music, the place where the elocutionary arts and the graphic arts and the literary arts and the domestic arts were put on proud display. It was the Lyceum and the Gymnasium, as well as the Sanctum Sanctorum. It was the prime developer of black leadership in this country for a long time. Another historian wrote, "It became to the Afro-American race what Faneuil Hall was to the Anglo-American, the cradle of liberty." It produced Nat Turner and Martin Luther King Jr. and many others. The black church has been a womb and a mother to a vast spectrum of black leadership. Now, I would guess that most people in America have no idea about the role that black churches have played in advancing the American ideals of democracy and equality and justice for all. Not just in advancing the interests and the ideals of black Americans, but of all Americans, and those ideals that are at the heart of what this nation stands for. After the Civil War, black Americans became engaged in politics, and they brought a dedication to civil rights for all Americans into the politics for the first time of America. What was required at first was to separate from white churches, because it took something that extreme, something that extraordinary to lead all of us and our nation towards freedom and out of the captivity of white supremacy and superiority of one over the other. There's still a road, though, we must travel, a promise we must make. There's a dream with the future and a risk we must take. Ultimately, for racism in this country to become a thing of the past, it will require black people and white people and people of all colors, hues, and ethnicities to feel at home together in work, in worship, and everywhere. The only way that we'll be able to permanently put down the evil forces of racism will be for our communities to truly come together as one human race. The root of the word religion, religio, is to bind together or to reconnect. So part of the work is to reconnect the human family. But the goal isn't simply integration, it is more inclusion. I heard someone speaking on the radio say, integration puts us together, but inclusiveness makes us a community together. For real inclusiveness to happen, we all need to come to terms with how and why the churches were separated in the first place. And that's why it's important to allow our schools to freely teach American history, even the parts that might not make everyone feel proud. In Oklahoma, since 2021, in our lifetime, it's illegal to teach children, kindergarten through 12th grade, anything about American history that might make them feel uncomfortable. It's a law in Oklahoma. It's hard to teach about things like slavery and segregation and race massacres like Wounded Knee and 1921 Tulsa and the Trail of Tears without having some feelings of discomfort. Because in order to know where we're going, we need to know where we've been. One thing that we can learn from the prophetic tradition of America's black churches is that first naming the negative is how we eventually get to the positive. For example, Frederick Douglass, after escaping American slavery, went on to challenge the hypocrisy and the failures of this nation. I will hold up America to the light and scorn of moral indignation, he said. In doing this, I shall feel myself discharging the duty of a true patriot. For he is a lover of his country who rebukes and does not excuse its sins. And then there's Martin Luther King Jr., who said of America, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my own government. In his speech to sanitation workers in Memphis, he said, if this nation does not change its ways, it is going to hell. Of course, despite these chafing rebukes of our nation, both Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King Jr. are considered two of the greatest and most influential Americans who've ever lived. Yet they were both highly controversial in their own times. Back then, they were viewed by many as a threat to the nation and as unpatriotic. But their stories remind us that we can confront hard truths and they can help set us free. In fact, we must face hard truths if we want to reach the promise of this life. Something that Martin Luther King and Frederick Douglass have in common is that they were both border walkers. They both had a foot in two worlds. Their knowledge of more than one culture prepared them to lead people to freedom. Frederick Douglass, like Harriet Tubman, was a border walker. Both were raised in slavery, but also knew what it was like to be free. Martin Luther King Jr. was a border walker. He was raised in the black church and in black schools in the segregated South, and was also educated in elite white institutions in the North. And this background, having lived and come to understand two cultures, two worlds, prepared Dr. King and Douglass and Tubman and many others to lead this country closer to its promise for all of us. So you and I, we need to discover how we are border walkers. What are the ways in which we understand more than one culture, more than one way of being? And one of the ways that we can do this is to learn as much as we can about the complete history of our country including Black history, Native American history, Latino-Latina history, European, Islamic, Jewish, Muslim, and Asian contributions to American history. Because if we don't know where we've been, it's hard to know where we're going. Now, we think of all this as past history when we talk about the ways in which many Christian churches used to treat African Americans as less than or as a problem in the eyes of God and of society. But today there are prominent preachers and pastors and thousands of churches in this nation right now, this morning, who preach misogyny, or that women are less than men, or homophobia and transphobia and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and anti-Catholicism. In many of these churches, if you're gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, or non-binary, you may not be asked to sit up in the balcony, but you are asked to stay in the closet. The beating recently of a 16-year-old non-binary student in Owasso, Oklahoma public schools, Nex Benedict, and their death the following day has rocked our city and our nation, as we've seen articles from the LA Times to the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all across the country about this violence and tragic death. Does anyone think that the prejudicial views taught in many churches is not part of what provokes these kinds of things from happening? Do you see how such churches' views help to propel politicians who use such rhetoric to advance their own careers under the guise of moral righteousness? We can learn many things from Black history in America, and especially from the Black churches in America. For one thing, no church should ever use its moral authority as a source of subjugation or degradation of any human life. Any human life. And as long as there are churches that are doing that, there need to be other churches and communities like this one that stand up and affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Speaking of border walkers, non-binary and transgender people are true border walkers. By definition, they know what it's like to walk in more than one world. That's why instead of cursing our non-binary neighbors and siblings, we are wise to listen to them and to support them. There's still a road we must travel, a promise we must make. There's a dream with the future and a risk that we must take. There's a struggle that we have yet to win, and to sit still would be a sin. Thank you.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of We have come, treading a path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of a bright sun is